Tonight we are featuring Morissa Schwartz, who has a long history with the Women's Center for Entrepreneurship, starting as a client who was not in business to now owning two businesses and acting as a business coach and facilitator for the WCEC. Morissa, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Steve. That's an awesome intro.
Tell us about the businesses that you currently own and operate.
Sure. So the first business that I started, the one that started all with the WCEC, is Gen Z Publishing. I started it after I had self-published a book when I was in high school, and then I traditionally published a book in college. And I saw the process, and I saw a few different things. I saw, number one, it's very difficult for a young person, namely somebody under the age of 40, to be published by a traditional publisher. And I also saw that there were a lot of issues in the publishing industry, between Vanity Publishers trying to take advantage of new authors, to high selectivity, to self-publishing where authors didn't know how to market themselves. And I thought, I think I can come into this field and kind of try to solve some of those issues. So that's what I do with Gen Z Publishing. We are an independent book publisher. We are not a self-publisher. We're not a Vanity publisher. We're independent. We've had several bestsellers. We've published close to 100 books at this point, and it's a blast. I love Gen Z Publishing, and that led me to my other business, which is Dr. Rissi's Writing and Marketing, which is my company where we do writing work, marketing work for small to mid-sized businesses. So SEO, social media, PR, social media ads. Basically any kind of marketing that a client could want. We started out working mainly with authors and marketing their books, but now we've worked with everybody from insurance companies to a fancy napkin company to television, children's television show. So we've worked with quite a few clients in a number of different industries, and it's great. And I love that I get to work with an incredible team from around the world every day with my two companies.
When did you notice a major turning point and a big breakthrough in your business?
Well, I can talk about both, but there were different turning points in each business.
Sure.
Gen Z, the turning point was definitely when I stopped being a one-woman wolf pack and became an actual wolf pack person. I'm an only child. I was always the type of person, I didn't enjoy group projects. I wanted to do everything on my own. And I tried to use that thought process for business, but it doesn't work in business, at least not in the long term. I've grown this team. I now have 28 people on my team, and it's really neat just being able to rely on people. And I cannot go back to doing it myself. It wouldn't do me any good. It wouldn't do my businesses any good. So that's probably the biggest lesson, the biggest growing point.
Now, when you hired that first intern, was that a paid intern or an unpaid internship?
She started out where she did it for college credits, which is what I usually recommend. So she was getting college credits for it. I was able to, give her recommendations and everything. And then after her first semester interning, that was when I offered her paid freelance work. And that's typically what I do with interns, where they work for credits. And I usually try to entice people to work for credits, because then at least they're getting something for it. They write a report on it. I get to evaluate them and tell them constructive criticism. And then after that, that's when they're typically offered, if everybody's mutually happy with each other, a paid position as a freelancer.
And what kind of majors do you look for when you're looking for an internship?
It's funny, because you would think that they would just be all English majors, but I have worked with everything from English majors to engineering majors to business majors. And the engineering at first, kind of struck me funny, but the one specifically I'm thinking of, she was so passionate about books. But it's kind of like my thought process is always, if you're super passionate about something, maybe keep that as like a hobby. So this was almost like a side hustle, side hobby for her. It was like her relaxing time away from engineering. And I think that's awesome. So she was so passionate about the books, and it really showed through. Whereas somebody who's an English major, I could say this because I was an English major and that's what my doctorate is in literature. You take books for granted. You see them all the time, all day. It's your life. But that's why I really try not to judge people based on their majors, and just, who's going to be the most passionate about what they're doing.
How do you structure that? Is it 28 people reporting directly to you, or is there how does that work? How did you structure?
Yeah. Well, luckily, I'm not the most organized person, admittedly. Luckily, I've hired people who are very organized to structure that for me. So her name is Ashley. She's if Lauren is my right hand, Ashley's my left hand. And Ashley structured us just so she made like a little chart where, you know, it's me, and then I have 4 people that report to me. Those are my right and left hands. And then under them, they each have like 4 people that report to them. And we're structured really nice in different, you know, different parts of the company. So we have our writing section of the company, our social media section, our PR section, and our ad section. So there's a head of each of those departments in the company.
Where is it that you get your leads then?
Well, we practice what we preach. So for our clients, we get leads through SEO, through ads, through some social media outreach. And that's really what we do for ourselves as well. You know, when you type in certain keywords like ebook writers in New Jersey or top SEO services in New Jersey, we're the first ones that come up. So if we could do it for ourselves, we could do it for our clients. So I always like to, you know, kind of use us as a case study. When we send out case studies, my company is the first case study on there because we've done it for ourselves. And then we're also on several freelance platforms because I started out freelancing when I was a high school student as well. Myself and my company are top rated on basically every freelance platform is out there. So we also get leads from there.
Being a non-organized person, what is the #1 organizational tip that works for you?
That would be keeping a to-do list. I was actually just talking to somebody about this morning, and I hadn't realized how obsessed I am with this thing until I actually looked into my numbers. There is an app called Todoist, and what I really like about it, because I'm a naturally competitive person, is that it has the ability to be competitive, where the more things that you cross off your to-do list, the more points you get. So I found out today I'm like the top level because I have crossed off 26,000 items from my to-do list over the past 3 years of using the app. So I'm more than obsessed with this app, but it's great. And I've converted my whole team to using it. And it actually integrates well with this other system that we use, which is called Twist. And Twist is a lot like Slack, except much more organized and integrates perfectly with your to-do list. So those 2 things together keep me sane, and they're wonderful.
What advice would you give when it comes to hiring an employee, a freelancer, just anybody who's going to contribute to your team?
Yeah. So I would say something probably that's probably a little surprising, which is don't put so much stock in the interview process. Everybody sounds great in an interview. Everybody is so eager. If everybody was as great as they are in the interview, every business would be a $1 billion business because everybody just sounds so great in the interviews. What I do is I let their work talk. So typically when I'm hiring for a position, I hire 3 people and I let them know that I'm hiring 2 other people. And typically and I hire them for like a small freelance project. So typically one of those people is mediocre, one is decent, and one is good. And whichever one is good, that's the one that's going to stick around for another project. But that process has worked really, really well for us. And that way you're able to compare qualities, and it's a fair process as well.
I would love to know if there are any questions out there.
Hi, I'm Qualia. I was just wondering if you could explain Vanity Publishers. You've used that term a couple times.
Yeah, absolutely. So a vanity publisher is a publishing company that kind of preys on new authors, unfortunately. And what they do is they charge you to publish your book, but they don't necessarily give you anything for it. Like self-publishing, at least you get something for it. Usually you're just paying for the copies of the book that you're printing. But I can probably talk about this through a case study of a friend of mine. So I have this friend, he's like one of the sweetest people in the world. He's a preacher, and he came to me after paying a vanity publisher $2,500, and he wrote this book and he sent it to them and they said, okay, we'll publish it. And that's literally all they did. They charged him $2,500. They didn't edit it. They didn't market it, nothing. They just published it. And he didn't know any better because he was new. He was just excited to be published by somebody. But what that company does, they prey on a new author who don't realize that there is such a thing as self-publishing. They essentially self-publish the book, and they're not selective. They publish anybody. So unfortunately, in the publishing industry, there are a lot of scams out there, and vanity publishing is considered pretty much a scam. So whenever you go to a publishing company and they're talking about charging you an upfront fee and not talking about royalties, they're usually a vanity publisher.
And thank you so much for sharing, what you've learned and the things that you've picked up and the programs that you use as an inspiration and some information for fellow entrepreneurs here on the phone tonight.